Source Nation, join us now for the Pendulum with Dr. Samori Swygert, a platform that encourages the 4Ds of philosophy: discussion, discourse, dialogue, and debate. Prepare to travel from the past, present, and have discussions of future implications and projections with a correlation to African Americans. These topics are intended to grab your attention, cause contemplation, and encourage some form of action. From the world to the White House to the hood and everything good, the pendulum is swinging your way. Source Nation, here is your host, Dr. Samori Swygert.
Hello, Source Nation, and once again, I'm wishing you tremendous blessings in health, family, love, career, success, spiritual progress, and the accomplishment of your dreams. Now, Source Nation, let's get really intellectually intimate. We definitely are here for a great show today. And before we do that, make sure you get your coffee, your wine, your water. If you want to turn your water into wine, that's fine. And you know what to do. That means passing my shoe horn so I can put my foot all up in the mix today. And I'm definitely going to be putting I might need 2 shoe horns. Anyway, make sure that you share this with your friends and family on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms. I'm your host, Dr. Samori Swygert, a.k.a. Doc Swag, and I want to welcome you to my show, The Pendulum. Now, some may say, why do you call your show The Pendulum? Well, a pendulum is an apparatus that people associate with a clock. It helps gauge time and space. It traverses through time in a constant backward and forward motion. Some will say retrograde to anterograde. And this is what we'll be doing throughout the show as I engage topics. We have to connect the dots of the past, present, and future. And we're definitely going to be connecting the dots of the past, present, and future today. All right? What he said, you're going to learn today. The show is designed to encourage the 4Ds: debate, dialogue, discussion, and discourse. Gather your friends and family as we prepare to travel from the past to present and have discussions of future implications and projections with a correlation to African Americans. From the world to the White House to the hood and everything good, the pendulum is swinging your way. Okay, let me get a swig of my coffee. I'm still sipping that nice Ethiopian Harare, I believe it is. Oh, great brew. All right, so Source Nation, let's jump into this. I'm going to give you a little intro, then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to dive all the way, and we're going full body. We are skinny dipping and bathing in this topic. Black media, the sustainability, the viability. What is the purpose of black media in today's society, in the 21st century, under a Trump administration? My very first show was at the top of the year, January. And I asked the question, what is the fate of black media in the 21st century under the Trump administration? It was epic. I broke down the history of black media from some of the first black newspapers and black journals. Spoke about the importance and what these black newspapers and journals, what they did, what they advocated for. I talked about the evolution of black radio and black news shows and talk shows, from Tony Brown's Journal to it was a lot of different, Gil Noble, and just a lot. Then I started getting into where we are now, and then I spoke about the different steps that we need to do to make sure that we have sustainability and viability in this 21st century, right? I discussed net neutrality. I discussed how we have to get on the FCC board. We got to get seats on the board. How to go about getting in those seats on the board. Yeah, we went all the way in. And now we're in December. So that was in January. We're in December now. A lot of things have unfolded. People are crying, because you've seen different black media personalities lose their positions. Some resign. Some have been fired and let go. So black people are emotional. They don't know where to go and things of that nature. We're in love with celebrity. So with that said, let's take a little break and I'll be back because we're going to discuss the genius mind of that Afrocentric scholar, Dr. Amos Wilson. Yes, Dr. Amos Wilson. This man was a genius, a mastermind that we need to read up on. Well-published author, so insightful and committed and passionate about the affairs of black people in America. And he had a very, very powerful, informative, critical, and analytical position on black media in his book, Blueprint for Black Power. Before he passed away, he left behind some popcorn for us to follow as we try to get through this jungle. So anyway, let's take a quick break and I'll be back. And we'll be talking about the legacy and the prophecies of Dr. Amos Wilson. All right. First, let's just thank our sponsors, which is something else we got to talk about. Zuliana Health, Wellness, and Fitness, Paper to Film Productions, Revolution Mills, Renovations, Meet My Types Matchmaking, Blend to Blend Juice Bar Boutique, Urban Grandstand Digital, and New Covenant of Praise Worship Center. They make all these things possible. So make sure you check them out. And with that said, we're going to take a little break and we'll be right back. Peace.
Source Nation, stay tuned. You're listening live to The Pendulum with Dr. Samori Swygert.
Source Radio Network is just one of the many platforms that is used to fulfill dreams of our listeners and create a purpose that will impact the lives of our communities, cities, and the world. It is often said that great things will happen when a group of driven people work together to accomplish one goal. We're giving people the opportunity to have a voice, translate words that haven't been heard, and paint pictures that no one has seen. Source Radio Network is fueling your life's purpose. How can you listen? www.blogtalkradio.com/Source Radio.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nub. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on Report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still life of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry armed women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with Coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
Welcome back, Source Nation. You're listening live to The Pendulum with Dr. Samori Swygert.
All right, Source Nation, welcome back to The Pendulum. I'm your host, Dr. Samori Swygert, and as I stated earlier, before the break, we are going to delve and dive into the legacy, the prophecy, and the message of Dr. Amos Wilson. He wrote a book entitled A Blueprint for Black Power, a moral, political, and economic imperative for the 21st century. All right. Yes. And he wrote this book in the 20th century, right? Now, the book itself is, I'm thumbing through it all the way to the end. The book itself is 858 pages before you get to the bibliography. This is a thick book. So Dr. Amos Wilson put in a lot of work. Now, I'm not even going to play around with this. I'm not going to play with y'all, as my southern cousins would say. I'm not here to play with you. I'm not going to tussle with your boy. I'm not tussling with y'all. There's some harsh realities that Black America needs to pay attention to at our own peril. See, we're too much in love with the celebrity. We're too in love with the lie. Many of us, I can't say all, many of us are too gullible. And many of us are just misinformed that if we only knew, we would do better. Okay? So Dr. Amos Wilson had a segment in his book, and he critically broke down Black media and the Black bourgeoisie's influence on it, right? So let's jump into this. It starts with a segment on media and the ideology process. First, he went on to describe the facts about the media, right? And he starts off like this. He starts off by analyzing a statement by a man by the name of Michael Parenti. And he says, most American institutions, be they hospitals, museums, universities, businesses, banks, scientific laboratories, or mass media, are owned by a relatively small number of corporate rich. Okay? Then goes on to say that in the context of ethnically pluralistic America, the latter part of the next to the last sentence of Parenti's statement can be usefully transliterated to owned by white American community. However, it remains true that within that community, the major institutions, and in the context of our present focus, the mass media are owned by a relatively small number of the corporate rich. Parenti proceeds to ask and answer the following questions. Pay attention now. Who specifically owns the mass media in the United States? Answer. 10 business and financial corporations control the 3 major television and radio networks, NBC, CBS, ABC, 34 subsidiary television stations, 201 cable TV systems, 62 radio stations, 20 record companies, 59 magazines, including Time and Newsweek, 58 newspapers, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and the Los Angeles Times, 41 book publishers and various motion picture companies like Columbia Pictures, 20th Century Fox, 3/4 of the major stakeholders of ABC, CBS, and NBC are ABC, CBS, and NBC are banks such as Chase Manhattan, Morgan Guaranty Trust, Citibank, and Bank of America. The overall pattern is one of increasing concentration of ownership and earnings. According to a 1982 Los Angeles Times survey, independent daily newspapers are being gobbled up by the chains at the rate of 50 or 60 a year. 10 newspaper chains earn over half of all newspaper revenues in this country. 5 media conglomerates share 95% of the records and tapes market, with Warner's and CBS alone controlling 65% of the market. 8 Hollywood studios account for 89% of U.S. feature film rentals. 3 television networks earn over 2/3 of total U.S. television revenues. 7 paperback publishers dominate the mass market for books. Those are some serious sightings right there. Serious. All that is owned by the corporate, rich, white elite. Okay? Now, here's the other thing. He talks about the existence of independent television and radio stations. And he said, practically the only shows these independents produce are the local evening newscasts, the rest of their time being devoted to network programs. Most of the remaining stations are affiliated with the Public Broadcasting System, PBS, which receives almost all of its money from the federal government and from corporate donors and their foundations, with a smaller share from listener subscription. What does that mean? That means all of what we are consuming, what we're hearing, what we're watching, it comes down from the head of the octopus that has its tentacles on every single inch of the media, from magazines to books to movies, to the news stations, to the programs, all controlled by rich white corporate elite. They dictate what comes out. And the little bit that we do have, the very little bit that we do have through public broadcasting system is what? Is funded by the federal government. Then you have to ask, well, who's in control of the federal government? Where does most of the federal government power come from? Rich, white, corporate elite. Yes, you say, oh, it's about elections. Okay, but then when we talk about elections, we have to talk about funding, campaign finance, super PACs. Who funds those? Rich, white, elite corporations. We're going to get into the voting process and everything because he breaks all that down. He ties it in the political with the media. And then it says it's not just the federal government that supports PBS, it's the corporate donors. So once again, the corporate donors are still here. And then a smaller share is through listener subscription. All right. So we're at a very dangerous moment when it comes to black media. All right. A very precarious moment. And I want to talk about this part that he says. All right. Listen carefully. The white corporate elite media information establishment uses its control of the mass media to create and reinforce the ideology that transforms interest into a general interest, justifying existing class relations as the only natural and workable ones. The preferred and optimal, although not perfect, societal arrangement. The corporate elite owned and controlled media function to create a climate of opinion, to shape social perception by framing the reality and information which basically shapes the formation and expressions of opinions. They do this mainly through setting the issues agenda, that is by controlling the domain of discourse, determining what is worthy of public exposure and discussion. Let me say that again. Determining what is worthy of public exposure and discussion, meaning they have the ability to promote or censor. They choose what issues and information are to be emphasized, to be ignored or suppressed. Consequently, they create visibility and legitimacy for certain persons, certain groups and opinions, and thereby impose limits on public knowledge, interest, discourse, understanding, behavioral orientation, and capability. All right? He's making it plain for you. I can't make it any more plain for you than that. Right? Now, here's where we start getting into what we see, and we start getting into the politics, and then we start carving deeper into the black bourgeoisie, and you look into funding of media. And when we talk about black-owned media, who really runs it? Who's at the helm of it? Who's behind? We, as black consumers of media, we may see a black face and say, oh, that's the boss, that's the person. Who's behind the boss is what we need to be looking at. And this is what we'll be breaking down. Now, he says conservatives and religious new rightists, right wing, new rightists, make over 17,000 weekly television radio broadcasts across the country. These are conservatives, right? With much of the airtime donated by sympathetic station owners. Hundreds of radio and TV stations are owned outright by conservative organizations. All right? Hundreds of radio and TV stations are owned outright by conservative organizations. Over 1,000 radio and TV outlets beam a fundamental evangelical message around the nation. The right, right wing, is not seeking changes of a kind that burden or threaten the interests of dominant corporate class. If anything, it advocates a view of the world that wealthy media owners look upon with genuine sympathy, unlike the view offered by leftists. The centrist media is, in a word, more receptive to the right than to the left because its owners and corporate heads share the right's basic feeling about free enterprise, capitalism, communism, labor unions, popular protests, and U.S. global supremacy, even if not always seeing eye to eye with it on specific policies and certain cultural issues. In addition, the right has money to buy media exposure and the left usually does not. Did you hear what I just said? In addition, the right has the money to buy media exposure and the left usually does not. And this is true because if you think about what, when the whole thing broke with Donna Brazile and Roland Martin and Hillary Clinton and the DNC and Roland and Donna's, trying to get the questions to Hillary Clinton. And then that whole thing got blown up. Now, recently, Donna Brazile has published her book that's sold, just doing well. But she says, look, the DNC was basically bankrupt. They spent a lot of the money on Obama, and we were basically bankrupt. This holds true where it says the right has all the money. The left usually has none, right? Now, let's talk about what happens, being that the conservatives usually control this media market. Listen to how he breaks down. You have these right-wing stars of media, like Rush Limbaugh, all right? An updated version of what Parenti noted in 1986 will convincingly demonstrate the preponderance and pervasiveness of a general center-to-right political media establishment arrayed against Black America and progressive non-Black Americans. A review of the most popular TV and radio talk programs saliently reveals that they owe their popularity to barefaced and barely disguised anti-Black, anti-liberal social political orientations and content. In a major urban market like New York City, quote, hate radio, unadorned, crude expressions of hatred of Blacks are a 24-hour, 7 days a week fare. The radio stations and hosts who broadcast such attitudes receive markedly higher ratings and are listened to by enormously large audiences numbering in the millions, compared to their milder or even more liberal counterparts. Rush Limbaugh, nationally syndicated TV and radio personality who transparently disguises his Reaganite conservative views, anti-Black, anti-liberal attitudes as entertainment and political satire, speaks daily to an audience approaching 20 million, 70% whom are middle to lower class whites. So 70% of Rush Limbaugh's audience are middle to lower class whites. But his first book sold over 3 million, and his second book, published in the fall of 1993, had a printing of 3 million. And that was the largest in U.S. history. And he goes on and on and on about Limbaugh, the right wing, and the things, right? So let's talk about this now. Listen carefully. In the aftermath of that discussion, we need not belabor the need for aggressive Black-owned and controlled countercultural media information network. However, to counter the propagandistic white media establishment, the Black Media Information Network must be supported and financed by Black-owned businesses, which in turn must be primarily supported by Black consumers. The Black press today is not free or powerful press because it lacks these necessary supporting pillars. The more successful and wealthy the Black media become, meaning the more they are financed by white-owned corporate advertising, the less free and weaker they become. Fear of incurring the disapproval of their white advertisers effectively prevents them from providing their audiences with truthful, critically astute, and informative analysis of the nature of white domination. Right there is where I want to drop a pin, because that is where we have so much problems. We have so many problems when we talk about what we consider, we do have Black media. We have Black media. We got TV One. We got BET and all that. Listen to what he said. He said, the Black press today is not free or powerful press. Why? Because it lacks these necessary supporting pillars. The more successful and wealthy the Black media become, meaning the more they are financed by white-owned corporate advertising, the less free and weaker they become. The fear of incurring the disapproval of their white advertisers effectively prevents them from providing their audiences with truthfully, critically astute, and informative analysis of the nature of white domination. We have these TV Ones, we have BET, and all these other different outlets. Most of them are, when you trace if you trace the corporate line, you will find that it's either really a subsidiary of a white-owned corporation, or they may be Black-owned, but they don't have enough money to run the shows and everything that they need by themselves because it's not supported by Black businesses. What do I mean by that? That means white advertisers prop up black media because that's how they get their money. By letting white corporations, white elite corporations, pay them through advertising. So that means when you start talking too black, you sound too Afrocentric. You sound too black nationalist. You speaking too much about police killings. We don't want you talking about reparations. You talking too much about this mass incarceration. You talking too strongly about gentrification. You know, you sound too black liberationist. You sound too Huey Newton. You sound too Malcolm. You know, we think we want to pull our advertising. Oh, now you start seeing these black networks water down their content. Why? Because I'll tell you why. What did I do? I got to do my homework. I got to do my homework for y'all. So what I did was like, well, let me tune into some of these radio shows, black radio shows, and during the commercial breaks, let me hear the commercial breaks that they talk about. Let me hear who the sponsors are, right? I'm just going to name a few. Walt Disney World Resorts. That's not black owned, okay? Well, we know Disney is not black owned. You have these debt relief programs and tax debt relief programs that are advertising, not black owned. You have these home monitoring services, like, you know, you have like Vivint, and just all these different things where you can, you know, you can set up cameras in your household and they monitor through their surveillance network. These are not black owned home monitoring services. Bowl and Branch Sheets, not black owned. 1-800-Flowers is not black owned. Sherry's Berries is not black owned. The Sleep Number Mattress is not black owned. Pet Meds is not black owned. Pet Meds is not black owned. Tile, the monitoring service for anything that can be movable and you can monitor it on your phone. Progressive Auto Insurance is not black owned. Yeah, you know, Flo, the white girl that seems to know it all. Yeah, that's not black owned. The Zipa snoring device is not black owned. And it goes on and on and on. So is Dr. Amos Wilson right? He is correct. He's correct. So we are looking at these black media outlets as if they are the pillars of our black community, yet they're financed and backed by these white advertisers. And if any given point in time, the white advertisers say, you know what, no, we're not going to deal with y'all because y'all talking too tough, the whole thing collapses. So he said we need to start having more black businesses. We got to have black consumers and customers support more black businesses, and the black businesses need to run their ads with these black media outlets. That's how you cut that out. All right. Now, there's the other thing I want to talk about. He said, if an African-centered liberation movement is to be successful, it must rescue the collective African mind and soul from the clutches of Eurocentric and non-Afrocentric ideology. Such a movement must organize itself for a struggle to the death against the continuing internalization of self-defeating, self-destructive ideas by African people. All right? He said, such a movement must organize itself for a struggle to the death against the continuing internalization of self-defeating, self-destructive ideas by African people. He said to the death, not to the end of football season, not to the end of Christmas, okay? Not to this shopping season, all right? Not till Jay-Z says, okay, well, I can sit at the table about some belt controversy. To the death, meaning this is a never-ending, it is a perpetual agenda. It is a perpetual agenda, and we have to get it through our minds. We keep playing these games. Oh, well, I'll do whatever I say we're going to do for, till football season's over with, and we'll be good because I think that we can do it. We can't even agree on boycotts or divestment into infinity. We can't do it. Too addicted to it. All right. Now let's move on, because he then talks about how we have these black neocons, neocons that have been propped up by white educational institutions of power that give them this power. They give them this acclaim, this notoriety. They parade them into these media outlets, and they bombard and inundate black media outlets as the authorities and the experts, the people that have expertise on black America and what black America needs, and parade them around. But these are neoconservatives, and he says they are dangerous. Now, real quick, if you're just tuning in, this is the Pendulum, Doc Swag, giving it to you raw about Dr. Amos Wilson, his prophecy about black media in the 21st century. Now, listen to this. Dr. Amos Wilson says, a relatively new wrinkle in the ruling elite strategy involves the invention and employment in vastly increased numbers of a species of Africans referred to as neoconservatives. These academic Uncle Toms and Thomasinas, that's what he said, Uncle Toms and Thomasinas, who occupy chairs in prestigious white elite institutions are the war dogs of the establishment, whose purpose is to accomplish two of the central ends of elite propaganda discussed above. And that's to prevent among African American peoples the dissemination of an Afrocentric ideology that effectively challenges the basic assumptions which justify and undergird white supremacy, and to thwart the coalescing of African-centered consciousness and identity among African people through the generation of ideological confusion, fragmentation, and contradiction. So he's saying you have these blacks that are propped up and employed by these prominent white elite institutions, but their whole thing is they come to you in blackface to cause discord, disruption, and take our minds off of black liberation, right? And listen what he says. The appointment by the white ruling elite of these neoconservative blacks to chairs in their most prestigious universities, underwriting their publications, permitting them editorial space in their most influential publications, and then providing them with valuable electronic media interviews, only hints at the fact that the ruling white establishment means to use all and every means at its disposal to maintain ideological supremacy over the African and black world to keep its supremacy. So he was saying that's what they do. In their universities, they give them access to appear in these journals, these newspapers, these articles. They give them editorial space. They give them electronic media interviews that they won't give other people. All right. Then he says what? Black neocons write white propaganda in blackface. Say it again. Black neocons, they write white propaganda in blackface. Their primary goal is to try and defeat the consciousness of African people. More dangerous than their writings, which are generally repudiated by the African community when and if they are read or discussed, is the possibility that these academicians, as heads of African studies and related departments, will use their positions to indoctrinate future African American teachers, professors, and intellectuals, in addition to students pursuing other vocations with ideologies compatible with white supremacy. So he's saying these black neocons, these black neoconservatives that are being raised up and engineered and designed under the system of white supremacy, they're infusing them and incorporating them into the heads of educational departments, meaning your department head, the Department of Black Studies, we're going to put this neocon here who doesn't embrace African-centered ideology and liberation. He actually embraces, or she actually embraces, white supremacy, white propaganda. And it's dangerous because they're influencing our children. All right? If the graduate students of these academicians go on to become heads of African studies departments across the country, as well as influential journalists, columnists, community leaders, and the like, the Afrocentric movement will be markedly hampered, if not completely thwarted, in its great leap forward. To a measurable degree, the pressure to remove outstanding Afrocentric chairs in African studies is already moving apace. A number of these chairs have been replaced by academic toms, and many African studies departments excuse me, have been restricted in their scope and squeeze drive life. So he's saying, excuse me, he's saying that many of these heads of departments that may have a awareness of black liberation, black consciousness, are already being replaced. Removed, and inserted with these neocons. All right. So that's one thing. Now, let's talk about this. The absence of an effective Afrocentric ideology network, which influences the popular as well as the academic mind. Such a network would include not only academic publications, but more crucially, the mass media, popular books, magazines, newspapers, radio and television programs, community education and training seminars and rallies. While there has been a manifold increase in the paper and electronic media in the African American community, and a corresponding emphasis in these media on African culture and black identity, black programming and black-centered writing and perspectives, this must not be construed to mean that black-controlled media are fully supportive of Afrocentrism. Listen to what I said. This must not be construed to mean that black-controlled media are fully supportive of Afrocentrism, meaning you may have your BET, you may have, there's a litany. I don't want to get into naming too many names yet, but it doesn't mean that they support Afrocentrism. One can safely describe the popular black-controlled and oriented media as dependent as on white ruling elite, licensing, and largesse, as essentially, here we go. Listen to this. This is how Dr. Amos Wilson describes black media, black-owned media. It is integrationist. It is assimilationist and accommodationist in orientation. As a media, they are tied to and promote Americanism as much as the white media, even when they permit a harmless amount of black radical political dialogue. All right, so you said black media, we don't espouse what we really should be espousing. No. We're more so integrationists. We're assimilationists. We're accommodationists. We promote the Americana. We don't emphasize African-centered consciousness, right? Now, let's move along. He then comes to the next section, and it's called the black media, white media and blackface. This is where it gets juicy. The most popular black media productions, Ebony, Emerge, Black Enterprise, Essence, Upscale, and other similar magazines, the black radio stations, and television programs which feature black-oriented formats have in large measure been victimized by their very success. For such success depend on white elite financing and underwritten by white elite advertising revenues, has made successful black media, quote unquote, extremely sensitive to Afrocentric ideology and even circumspect about radical chic black-oriented ideology. All right? And that's ideology emphasizing black identity and culture that is a bit critical of Eurocentrism. All right? On the whole, black media are essentially a parochial establishment, lacking vision and courage, craving white media acceptance and recognition, specializing in racial ego massage, commiseration, complaints, and victimization. They are relatively of low educational value and provide little worthwhile leadership for the African American community. They are dark intimations of their white counterparts, which set their reactionary agendas, news stories, editorials, and features. Did you hear what I said? For their white counterparts, they let the white counterparts set their reactionary agendas, what the news stories would be, what the editorials would be, and their features. Right? And he says, even though Afrocentrism is phenomenally increasing in the African American community and pop culture, rap music, the popularity of Afrocentric t-shirts and arts, Afrocentric personal dress and adornments, the demand for Afrocentric and Afrocentric oriented multicultural education in African American communities, and etc., one would be very hard pressed to find any popular African American magazines such as Ebony or radio or television series which have produced in-depth, thoroughly descriptive explanations of the ideology and the goals of Afrocentrism. Nor would one readily find a clear indication of an Afrocentric scholar, spokesperson, columnist, or editor consistently or unrestrictedly published in their pages or hosting their programs. For essentially, the current black media establishment is still one with what it was when it received some of the most severe criticism from sociologist E. Franklin Frazier in his much acclaimed book, Black Bourgeoisie, published in 1962. So what he's saying is we put on the show, you know, we wear the t-shirts, we wear the dashikis, and, you know, we do all of that. But we'd be hard pressed when it comes to having real programming and real shows that address Afrocentrism and all that comes along with it, the reshaping of the mind. All right. I want to go ahead and move on to the next portion of what Dr. Amos Wilson said. All right. This part is good. The black print media as exemplified by Ebony, Essence, Emerge, EM, and other similar national publications fit E. Franklin Frazier's characterization to a T. These type of publications, along with the electronic media brethren, are boringly innocuous, inoffensive, and bland, apparently frightened. They're frightened of provoking the disapproval of their national and multinational advertisers and of raising the ire of the white ruling establishment on whose favor they depend for survival. These media assiduously concern themselves with reporting the activities of black celebrities, of the black bourgeoisie, and with the selling of the products of white-owned manufacturers to black consumers. The black media literally delivers the black market to white merchants. Can I say that again? Did you hear what I just read to you? Listen to what I said. He's talking about these black media outlets. He said, apparently, black media outlets are frightened. They are frightened of provoking the disapproval of their national and multinational advertisers and of raising the ire of white ruling establishment on whose favor they depend for survival. These media assiduously concern themselves with reporting the activities of black celebrities, of the black bourgeoisie, and with the selling of products of white-owned manufacturers to black customers. The black media literally delivered the black market to white merchants. Come on now. Come on. Dr. Amos Wilson knocked that out the park right there. He knocked it out the park. They'll never be able to find that baseball. That's gone. That is so real right there. That is so real. Everything is, Oh, me, celebrity this, bourgeois that. Oh, Jay-Z did this, Beyonce did that. Oh, such and such is queening right now. Oh, this is good. This is, it sells this thing where we celebrate and live vicariously through celebrities. Like this whole Meghan Markle getting married to Prince Harry. What does that have to do with your liberation right here in America? Is Meghan Markle getting married to Prince Harry going to get your kid in the school that you need? Is Meghan Markle getting married to Prince Harry going to stop the police from killing your son? Is Meghan Markle marrying Prince Harry going to stop you from getting gentrified up out of your community? Is Meghan Markle getting married to Prince Harry going to get you some reparations? Is Meghan Markle marrying your Prince Harry, is it going to do anything for your taxes here in America? Is Meghan Markle marrying a Prince Harry, is that going to change supplementation for when you have kids and you need assistance? Meghan Markle marrying this, creating this celebrity no, you're not winning at all. This is symbolism. As if this is providing some type of right now, real-time economic relief. As we would say with Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. What is Meghan Markle getting married to Prince Harry, this celebrity embrace? What is that doing for you economically, educationally? What is that doing for you? Nothing. Yet we let black media sell us this stuff as if it's somehow going to improve our lives. We live in this vicarious fantasy world. We got to snap up out of that. Now, let's move on. He says, their stock in trade is now fundamentally the same as white mass publications. Talking about black media now. He says their stock in trade is now fundamentally the same as white mass publications. Oh, and also I wanted to talk about how he said black media delivers black market to the white merchants. So we get all these, we get them to tune in. We all tune in as black consumers and listeners and viewers. And because we have all this white advertisement, we go out and we buy all the white products, and services. Now, he says black media outlets, their stock and trade is fundamentally the same as white mass publications. Once again, celebrity features, male-female relations, career choices, opportunities, exercise, fitness features, self-help, and pop psychology features. Yes, that's all you see when you talk about these black media outlets. Controversial issues are superficially treated when dealt with at rare instances and are carefully and inoffensively balanced. They are careful not to take any editorial position which can be interpreted as black nationalist or Afrocentric in orientation. Speak on it. The deeper issues and controversies involving Afrocentrism and black nationalism, involving deep ethnic confrontations between black and non-black communities, are virtually ignored by black media or dealt with so gingerly and benignly as to devoid any real substance while not revealing where the black media themselves stand relative to such issues. Afrocentric and black nationalist interpretations of events and ethnic reality are essentially excluded from the national black print media and local and regional electronic media. So you're saying, yeah, we can do the celebrity, we can do the makeup, we can do the party, we can do the gossip, who broke up with who cheated on who's gay, who's the next fashion trend, who just got married, all of this stuff. But when it comes down to the realness, because we are in a crisis as black people in America right now, when it comes to speaking to the crisis, get down to the nitty gritty, the bone marrow, and why we're in this crisis and how we fix it, specifically for black people, they glaze over it. They ignore it. They don't want to talk about it because they don't want to offend their white advertisers, right? Now, this is what I want to talk about here, what's coming up next, because this, what Dr. Amos Wilson is about to say, Yeah, I'm going to call out some names. Listen carefully. The views of black nationalist scholars and intellectuals, as well as activists, are rarely featured in black media, except when they are the objects of white media attack, or have aroused broad white social disapproval, or are engaged in some controversial struggle with the white powers that be. Some nationalists and activists are not interviewed or presented even under these circumstances, if their mere mention or presence may be interpreted by powerful whites as representing black media approval or support for their ideological orientation or social political activism. All right? Let me just say that one more time. The views of black nationalist scholars and intellectuals, as well as activists, are rarely featured in the black media, except when they are the objects of white media attack or have aroused broad white social disapproval. Let's put a pin there. This goes back, so TV One let go Roland Martin, right? Whatever some people saying is money and, whatever the case may be, but they decide ultimately to let Roland go. Roland, I'll give him kudos. Roland is a good journalist, but it is the thing that he totes the line. He totes the line. He does well on a lot of things, and then some things he doesn't go all the way in. He doesn't go all the way in, and you have to ask yourself why. Why don't you go all the way in, right? And so when I talk about this part where it says they don't interview black nationalist scholars and intellectuals or activists unless it's for them to be attacked, that brings me to the point where he had Umar Johnson on his show. When Roland had Umar Johnson on his show, it was clear that it wasn't there to listen to Umar's position, his ideologies, what he thinks may be solutions or things of that nature. He brought him into the lion's den to be torn apart, but it didn't turn out that way. Umar held himself down. He articulated his points of views. He had his answers cogently prepared, and he was able to combat and refute what was being imposed upon him. And so that when I read that part jumped out at me. And it's true, there are other, aside from Umar, there's a lot of other great black-minded, Afrocentric-minded individuals and that are out there. And you're like, wow, how come I don't ever see them on TV One and some of these other shows? You see the typicals. It's easy to get like the Van Jones, just other people on there, but there are some other great Afrocentric mind, as Umar would say, unapologetically black, unapologetically African on the shows. You don't see them. But it goes back to what Dr. Amos Wilson just said. They only bring them on when they are the object of white media attack or have aroused white social disapproval or engaged in some controversial struggle with the white powers that be. Excuse me. Some nationalists and activists are not interviewed or presented even under these circumstances. All right? Now, here's the other thing that we got to talk about. The setting of the tone, the parroting of white media, white sentiment in black media, right? He says this: the black media establishment is highly reactionary. Its agenda is generally set by the white media and ruling corporate elite establishment. Once a black person has evoked the full notice and approval or disapproval of the white media and ruling establishment, the black media establishment compellingly presents him or her to their black public. All right? So they set the agenda, and the black media ends up parroting that. All right? Let's move on to this part where we talk about black media, black experts, and white institutions, right? Here's the thing. So we've had all this stuff with police brutality and such. This is what he says. people always say, well, let's get an authority from Black America to talk about these type of things. Let's welcome such and such onto the show. This is what he says. When expert opinion is sought by the Black media regarding problems facing the Black community, Black on Black violence, drug abuse, economic deprivation, etc., this establishment, with its penchant for recognizing as expert only those Blacks so designated by the white media and educational establishments, or celebrities such as movie directors, actors, comedians, and other erstwhile Black entertainment or media personalities, and will publish the sayings or the writings of these, quote, experts, regardless of the fact that they generally express opinions of no real substance or relevance, or more often than not, express regressive and outdated approaches to Black problems. Come on. Is this not what we see? You take these propped up Blacks by white institutions, or let's go get this actor, let's get this singer, let's get this model, this pop culture icon to talk about it, as if they lend some type of real credence to the matter. These are not the real Black experts. Let's get some real ones in here that really represent us. Let's get the Claude Andersons up in there. People like Dr. Amos Wilson, unfortunately he's passed away, to talk on these things. All right? He said, obviously, their solutions to problems confronting the Black community will fit within a range of acceptable white elite opinions. Their Black faces and positions in white institutions serve essentially to sanction white elite ideas and values, which are antithetical to Black liberation and independence, to give these ideas authority and present them in ways in which deceive the Black public into assuming that they operate in its interest when the opposite is true. Come on. Listen to this. They are generally careful, however, never to offend the Black bourgeoisie, nor to challenge white opinion on fundamental economic and political issues. In fact, except in regard to race relations, the columnists generally echo the conservative opinions and platitudes of the white world on crucial issues. By echoing the opinions of the white community, the intellectual leaders of the Black bourgeoisie hope to secure the approval and recognition of white property classes with whom they seek identification. Come on. Come on. Dr. Amos Wilson was spitting that hot fire right there. That hot fire. That's that blue flame fire right there. All right? Listen to this. Let's turn the stove up a little more. The Black broadcast media is a major culprit in mesmerizing the African American community, particularly its youth, with stupefying, mind-numbing, retrograde music and DJ claptrack music created and recorded by the lowest elements of a street culture and sold and distributed by white-owned, Japanese-owned record companies who have shown nothing but the nastiest contempt for the peoples whose music is the principal source of their fabulous wealth and power. In general, Black electronic media feed the mind-destroying, self-defeating addiction Blacks have for music, whether rap, jazz, hip-hop, or gospel. Black celebrity-driven electronic and print media saturate their audiences with Black bourgeois political nostrums and palliatives, hokey cliches, and hopelessly wrong-headed prescriptions for Black social and economic advancement and liberation. Once again, this reliance on Black celebrity. We're in love with the celebrity. We can't divorce from the celebrity. We allow them to be at the helm of where we're supposed to be. And the only thing Black celebrities are trying to do is try to fit in and integrate and accommodate white ideology. All right. He says this, like the white media, virtually ignore, suppress, or invalidate more radical alternative points of views, social, political, economic prescriptions, and programs for African empowerment and liberation. Excuse me. Unlike the white media, however, the Black media does not see as one of their most important roles that of creating visibility and thereby legitimacy by raising from relative obscurity those persons, groups, and organizations, those publications which speak directly and practically to the liberation of African people from the mental and physical bondage to white supremacy. He's saying white media, they will raise up, white media will find these different organizations and groups and people that espouse white domination, white rule, white elitism, white supremacy, and put them into the national spotlight. Whereas black media, when it comes to finding individuals, groups, and people that are serious, our intellectual, our scholars, that are serious about promoting our African consciousness and awareness, what does black media do? We don't do what white media does. No, we do the opposite. We push them down. We keep them in obscurity. We don't want, we don't hold them up. We don't glamorize them. We don't want people to see them. We hide them. That's what black media does. So that's fact right there. That's fact. Now, black books matter, right? So let's move to this. Black books matter. He said, relative to publication of books which target the black American community, one need only look at black literary review sections of magazines like Black Enterprise, Ebony, Emerge, Essence, and literary quarterlies or supplements like the Quarterly Review of Black Books and the City Sun, literary supplement to note that 99% of the books reviewed are by black authors published by white-owned presses. All right? Authors and books which address this real struggle and prescribe for its success, particularly if they run counter to the social and political status quo, are contrary to acceptable opinion and black bourgeois interests, are ignored and actively suppressed by obsequious black media or black media, which is gutless and lacking in vision. The publishing companies are more likely to publish such books or that are the black-owned publishing houses. There were some lines ahead of that, but basically he was saying most of the black books, black publications that are Afrocentric in nature when it comes to discussing, they can only really find black publishing houses. And black media won't include these books into their magazines. But you have these popular Wall Street, New York Times bestsellers, all these other fluffy things that are not black minded. Well, they'll put those inside their book reviews. So he was talking about that. Now I want to move on because I know time is kind of winding down. Time flies when you're having fun. Let's talk about this. The relationship of the black media establishment with the black political establishment should be the focus of intense critical analysis from the nationalist and Afrocentric perspective. Boy, he lays this thing out. When it comes to politics in the black media, we should be ashamed of ourselves. Dr. Amos Wilson, he laid the game down flat. All right. The black media political establishment alliance can best be seen in its most uncritical and very agitatory support for black politicians. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what he's saying. The black media lionizes black incumbents, meaning praises, holds in high regards. It holds in high regards black incumbents without critical examination of their records and supports the black candidates for political office essentially on the basis of their blackness. Generally, as long as they are not Republican. Come on. A lot of people be saying this about Obama now. We didn't really analyze him and examine him. We went along with the fact of blackness. The black press makes little or no demands on black politicians, while it constantly parades them before the black community as role models, regardless of their success or lack of it in advancing the interests of the community. People ask, what did Obama really do for blacks? Not general. Don't say my brother's keeper. That's not black oriented. That's black, Latino, and X, Y, and Z. We say black. What are you doing for blacks? Don't say, oh, what healthcare. No, the healthcare didn't say anything about blacks. That was just general healthcare for the people. Don't say blacks. We mean black. What are you doing for blacks? We are the most vulnerable. We are the most impoverished. So when we say we need the most help, when we reference Neely Fuller and when we reference Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and when we talk about equity and justice, they say making sure the people with the most need get the most help. That's what we're talking about when we say we hold black issues for these black politicians. Don't include Dr. Claudia Anderson is very specific about that too. Don't come to me with, oh, well, you know, he did this tax bill. No, that tax bill was for everybody. It wasn't specific. When asked about reparations, he didn't have a positive stance, strong stance about reparations for blacks. He wasn't for that. Stop it. Stop that. All right. The achievement of black politicians, no matter how dubious, are often presented by the black press as, oh man, let me read this one more time. The black press makes little or no demands on black politicians. While it constantly parades them before the black community as role models, regardless of their success or lack of it in advancing the interests of the community. The achievements of black politicians, no matter how dubious, are often presented by the black press as vicarious achievements of the black community as a whole. And that goes back to also with Meghan Markle marrying Prince Harry. Vicarious achievements of the black community as a whole. We looking at Meghan Markle marrying Prince Harry. That's a vicarious achievement. You're not achieving anything. She's achieving something. Her romantic interest and economic gain from marrying him has nothing to do with you or the black community as a whole. Black incumbents are given ready access to black media outlets to massage the black community, to maintain their public persona, and to rationalize their very frequent failures to provide the black community with responsive and effective political leadership. Thus, they keep their opposition out of the media limelight, and community is cajoled into re-electing a political establishment whose accomplishments are meager when not plainly regressive. All right. Let's talk about this. Check this out. Except in the case of a crisis, such as that created by the Depression, when the Negro masses changed their political affiliation, the Negro politician may even mobilize the masses to vote against their economic interests. In his role as leader, the Negro politician attempts to accommodate the demands of the Negro masses to his personal interests, which are tied up with the political machines. He may secure the appointment of a few middle-class Negroes to positions in the municipal government, but when it comes to the fundamental interests of the Negro masses as regards to employment, housing, and health, his position is determined by the political machine, which represents the property classes of the white community. That spells Obama. That spells Obama for you right there. The black media establishment's gung-ho, indiscriminate support of black politicians and the white male elite dominated American political system is most clearly exposed during elections. Listen, this is exposed during elections. When it beats the drums, and he's talking about what the black media does when it comes to election season, right? This is what the black media does when it comes to election season. The black media beats its drums to get black voters to the polls to elect black officials. This establishment strives strenuously to convince the black electorate that every conceivable problem which confronts it can be resolved through voting heavily for black and friendly white politicians. The black media is ever quick to remind the black electorate of the historical struggles necessary to achieve their right to vote. It indicts the community for its electoral apathy and seeks to evoke guilty feelings in those who do not participate in the electoral process, making such ritualistic participation emblematic of democracy and first-class citizenship. Ooh, if this was not, oh my gosh. This is a special interest when it is realized that very few, listen to this, this is key, This is of special interest when it is realized that very few, if any, of the major political, economic, and social goals achieved by Black America, including the Voting Rights Act, were accomplished through Black voting prowess. The ballot box has been a relatively impotent weapon. Did you hear what I just said? The ballot box has been a relatively impotent weapon in the achievement of major victories by the Black community. It's the vigorous protests and direct action legal suits and extra legal processes such as boycott, sit-ins, and the like, which were used so effectively by the community to achieve its social political ends and to fight injustice and oppression. So he's saying you have Black media that tries to ram the whole electoral process and political process. Yes, we should participate in it, but we act like it's the end all be all, and if you don't, I'm going to guilt you into doing X, Y, and Z. When he says specifically in here, it wasn't the ballots. He said the Black ballot is relatively impotent when it comes to change, social political change. The social political change that we've ever achieved, including the Voting Rights Act, was through direct action, through legal lawsuits, through sit-ins, and through protests, divestments. That's what got things moving. We didn't vote to get the Voting Rights Act. No, we had to have direct action to influence the fact that we should get the right to vote. We didn't vote to get the right to vote. Understand? We didn't have the right to vote. So we didn't vote to get the Voting Rights Act. No, that was through direct action, lawsuits, sit-ins, divestments, protests, that agitation that Frederick Douglass talks about. That is where most of our achievements have come from, not from voting. The mystery of the Black media establishment's complicity with this type of political fraud and the electing of politicians to a bankrupt political system dominated by the ruling corporate elite whose values and aims are inimical to the cause of Black liberation. The election of Black politicians who are but pawns of the white Democratic Party machine and who seek to have the Black community identify its communal interests with the politicians' personal interests. The elections of politicians who in no way are interested in developing a program for the economic emancipation and empowerment of the Black community and who are not committed to the final overthrow of white supremacy becomes clear when you recognize their bourgeois interests. Let me continue because we're about to wind this down. The realization that the holding of political office or high appointed positions in government and the private sector on the part of a large and influential segment of the Black bourgeoisie, that their social standing in the Black community was achieved and is maintained by their ties to the Democratic Party and the American electoral system, makes it obvious as to why this Black social class seeks to convince the larger Black community that voting is the end all and be all of Black liberation. It's because you have the Black bourgeoisie who are getting the breadcrumbs from the corporate elite. They seek the status quo, keeping the larger, greater, broader Black American community under their control, using the media, the Black bourgeoisie using the media to puppeteer the masses of Black Americans to ultimately feed into the hands of the Democratic Party. When it shouldn't be for the Democratic Party at all, it shouldn't be for the Republican Party at all. It should be our own independent party. All right? He says, it is not informed as to how the system is subverted by the white corporate elite, as to how the process of government is almost unrelated. The process of governance is almost unrelated to the electoral process and electing of politicians, as to how an economically powerless people are almost invariably a politically powerless people as well. The Black community is misled by electoral mumbo-jumbo and antiquated, ethereal political theory into placing all of its hopes for survival, security, and liberation in the hands of politicians who are as powerless as the community they represent. Come on. Listen to this. Because of their personal and career ties to the white American political system, electoral processes, and political parties, Black politicians, along with their Black media supporters, are almost instinctively opposed to an independent nationalistic political and economic movement. Come on. Come on. All right. And lastly, let's round it out with this. He says, if the African American community is to achieve truly substantial power in America, it must rid itself of the leadership and influence of the Black political media alliance as it exists today. If the African American community is to achieve truly substantial power in America, it must rid itself of the leadership and influence of the Black political media alliance as it exists today. The stranglehold on Black opinion, by bourgeois publications such as Ebony, Essence, Jet, Emerge, Black Enterprise, EM, Upscale, Class magazines, and the like, by electronic media like BET, Ebony, Jet Showcase, Tony Brown's Journal, surprise at that, must be successfully challenged by the nationalist and Afrocentric movement. All right? So there it is. And he lays out these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. There's 9 things that he says we need to focus on when we talk about if we're going to have real Black media, what Black media really should be doing. And that's 1. Exposure of Afrocentric ideas through a broad range of publications regarding all important subject matter areas. Political, science, history, culture, anthropology, the social sciences, mathematics, science, literature, economics, and economic development, military strategy and tactics, propaganda and ideological warfare, espionage. These are the things we could be doing with Black media. Black media should be taking advantage of every opportunity offered by the media to spread Afrocentric ideology. Number 3, Black media should be developing and widely distributing Afrocentric books, booklets, pamphlets, articles, records, tapes, CDs, newsletters, journals, clothing items, and symbolic adornments. Number 4, sponsorship of Afrocentric community seminars, festivals, cultural events, training sessions, developmental projects. Number 5, Black media should be affiliated with the establishment of Afrocentric rehab centers, recreational programs, educational programs in schools. Seeing to it that the chairs of Black Studies programs are filled by Afrocentric scholars. Push for the establishment of all male training programs and schools and Afrocentric curricula throughout the early childhood, primary, secondary, and higher education institutions. Number 6, Black media should be challenging neocon and bourgeois ideological publications and public utterances. Number 7, Black media should be involved with the development of a prosperous Afrocentric economic, business, and financial network, spearheading capture of the internal markets of the Black community, as well as penetrating those of aliens and whites. Development of a full-fledged import-export business network across the African diaspora, as well as with other trading partners. Number 8, the establishment of an independent political party. And number 9, establishment of a nation within a nation. These are the 9 points that Black media should be seeking to do, according to Dr. Amos Wilson. All right. And lastly, he closes it out like this. All of this implies that the Black nationalist press must challenge the Black bourgeois media relative to their duplicity, cowardliness, and lack of imagination. It must accelerate its organization and clout and seek to overthrow what little influence the bourgeois Black media has in the Black community, as well as counter that of the more dominant white media. All right. So that was Dr. Amos Wilson. And that was, he was holding court. He was cross-examining Black media, the Black bourgeois, and white media, and Black media's complicitness with maintaining status quo white domination. All right. And this is where we are. This is where we are right now. So we've been seeing the purging of black media personalities, Tamron Hall, Roland, you just seeing it. Black media is on life support. So we have to create our alternative infrastructure. It's more than just having a show. We actually need to start coming up with our servers and electronic towers. We can operate independently and get our messages out. Because if we rely on bourgeois black media that tote the line for the Democratic Party, who is just an extension of greater white domination, then this is what we will continue to see. So anyway, that was Dr. Amos Wilson. I believe that his prophecy was fulfilled. He was fulfilled. I encourage you to go get that book, Blueprint for Black Power, a moral, political, and economic imperative for the 21st century. It was key. It is key. He spoke nothing but truth there. So anyway, this is Doc Swag. I'm signing out. You can hit me on Twitter. Doc Swag, DOCSWAGG06 on Twitter. You can find me on 2 Minutes and Some Change, 2MASC on Facebook, and Source Radio Network on Facebook. Every Wednesday, 8 p.m., The Pendulum. And I am out. Peace.
Yo.